difficult and very reluctant to give anybody advice of something I haven't lived through. But I would feel like fleeing down to the South Pacific. But that is down, that is crowded down there, and that's why the people left Tahiti, because they were so fertile and popular. They had to set these voyages there, going over and saying how the people went across the oceans with just the stars and being the motion of an island and seeing the clouds coming up, how they navigated.
Hmm.
And there was a boat, probably 10 years ago now, that made a boat like one of theirs out of the reeds and stuff. They had it, and they set off at Tahiti and came across the ocean in it to prove it could be done
Wow.
with the navigation methods that they presume they used in those days.
That's pretty neat. I didn't know about
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's probably old National Geographic stuff that I've read all these years. So. You're in uncharted waters.
Jeremy,
You mean in terms of the future?
Yeah.
you
Right.
want me to my bar of chocolate?
Yes, please.
I was born in tough times, but to me it wasn't tough times because I didn't have any idea that I wanted this, that, and the other thing. And I've seen mothers take kids into the stores and look at clothes. I inherited the clothes I got. I got no choice of anything.
And
I'll have a piece too if you got it out.
okay.
Just one square. And I didn't think I was poor or anything. I didn't think I was deprived.
Hers kind of, not yours.
And I didn't act like a brat. Well, maybe I did it. I don't know it. I got criticized. But I say, being the youngest child, what was really funny, that I think my brother said that, and my sister said I was spoiled. But when I saw my sister get slapped for making remarks to my mother, and I saw my brother get whacked over the backside for not doing what his father told him, I thought, well, that's not so smart. I don't like those things. I didn't do them.
There you go, Grandma.
Thank you. So it wasn't that they didn't favor me. I figured I wasn't doing it, so I didn't get it. But I didn't feel deprived, and I didn't have money to spend on my own. And you know, at Roger Williams Park at the end of Washington Avenue, where I lived, they had this committee. I don't know who set it up, but they had this 4-foot by 60-foot piece of lot, and if you lived in the neighborhood, you could go and sign up for one, and then a fella from the park department showed you how to plant things. And you did a roll of vegetables of this, a roll of vegetables of that, a roll of vegetables of something else. And I can remember reluctantly putting in a row of carrots because I didn't want to eat them.
I didn't know you didn't like carrots. And my dad doesn't.
Well, and then my mother paid me for the we went up and took care of our little lots, and they furnished the water, and we pulled out the weeds and that, and they showed us how to take care of them.
Wow, that's really great.
It was all summer. And then my mother paid me for the vegetables I brought home.
That's excellent. I think that's a great idea.
It was and then at the other end of the summer, they had a meeting or a whole group that got together and prizes were given out. And I guess the neighborhood businesses must have given the prizes because I got this wall vase, and I was so thrilled with that. To think of a kid getting about 10 years old getting a wall vase.
Right?
And I held that. It was hung on our wall for years, and I felt so bad when that broke.
Aw.
Now when I look back, I think of what kid would have What a well face for a wall base. And yet, that was such a good program.
That was a good program.
A good program, yeah, and
And I was under 10.
wow,
And at that time, you could walk up to the end of the street where the park was, where Radwood Park was.
right, safely, you mean?
Yeah, it was safe.
So what was it like going to RISD? You've never really talked about that to me before. You know, you talked about drafting torpedoes, I think, after you went out, but what was it like in your time going to RISD? Because it was unusual for a woman to go to college.
Oh, wasn't that? And I think there were equally as many women.
Oh, were they really? Even then?
Oh, yeah, at RISD.
At RISD, right, right.
You know, RISD was formed by women.
I did not know that.
Well, let's see. The businessmen of Rhode Island, back in, let's see, when Newport was at its height, and they had all this furniture that was being built, it was all done in European style. And the wives of the businessmen said, why should we be paying for all these designs to come over from Europe? We should start our own. So it was these women of Rhode Island, whose men were pretty wealthy, and a senator and things like that. So they got together and started a design college to have the furniture designs and the architectural designs. We shouldn't be paying for these designs from Europe. We got to have our own. We're Rhode Islanders. So that's what started the School of Design. And that's why it was a School of Design, not painting and...
Right. And you were living at home when you went there.
Pardon?
You were living at home when you went there.
Yeah.
Right.
It was $225 a semester. And I think they gave me... Or it was $225 they gave me. And I think my father only had to come up with $200. And to him, that was a luxury. The School of Design was kind of like giving the kids some fun. He didn't look at it as a business investment.
Right.
So I got a scholarship. How I got a scholarship was I was going to classical high school, and that's all the brain people. The artistic ones went to Central High, so they didn't have to concentrate on all this
All the studies.
other study. Well, actually, at that time, I didn't understand the difference. The School of Design was taught by what they called the Annapolis method. They assigned you the lesson the night before. You went home with the lesson you hadn't read or knew anything about. You spent the evening doing your homework. You had to listen to the lesson and then do all the things you should. You had to come into class the next day knowing the answers. And my brother used to say to me, why don't you listen in the daytime? You won't be carrying home all those books. I didn't understand the difference, and he didn't understand the difference.
Right.
He went to Central High, and he and my sister should have gone there because they were good students and I wasn't.
Right.
But I was tired of hearing, oh, you're Mary Everson's sister. She's such a good student. Oh, you're Kirk Everson's sister. He was one of our best students. I thought, I'll go where I'm not known.
I can see
And
that.
I stupidly didn't know the difference, and took me much later to realize they should have gone there, and I should have gone to the schools that they went to. But the funny part of it was, all the students who were better at artwork went to the other school, Central, that didn't have all the requirements to go to college. And because I was in the small group, where you had to be a good student, and there weren't many people that wanted to be designers or in the art world. No, none of them went there. So I took art the first year, And the second year, I enjoyed it so much. The second year, I took it in my lecture, my risk class. Well, then the next year, my teacher, who was very ill, and the second year he'd be getting all the other kids busy, and then be giving me what they were doing and a little more. And then he'd have me watch over and help the other kids. So the third year he was really ill, but he didn't want to retire because he wouldn't get his pension. So he was dragging himself around, and then in the morning he would send down to the office and call and see if I was available to teach some of his classes. So I did. So when it came time, that school was allowed 2 scholarships to the School of Design. So when it came time for the scholarships to be awarded the last year, there was this one girl who was a minister's son, and her father wouldn't let her go to the School of Design. He didn't want his daughter going there. So then the scholarship fell to me. We were both equally A.
Wow.
So the scholarship fell to me. So then I got it, and my father was being very indulgent. He'd give me the rest of the money
To let you go.
to let me go. They kind of considered it, well, let the little girl do what she wants. And I can remember my father saying, well, Evelyn will never get a job at the Five and Dime because she can't remember the prices,
Oh,
which was true, but it hurt.
right.
Mm.
But you had other talents,
Yeah.
like all of us.
And they didn't see that. The summer I was 16, the same teacher recommended me for the scholarship up at an art camp that he ran in Boothbay Harbor. So I was to get my room and board and the scholarship for earn that, and I went free for that was what I got. I earned my room and board, and I got a scholarship.
Wow.
So I spent the summer when I was 16 up in Boothbay Harbor. It was one of the nicest, fun summers I ever spent. I had been kind of little on the middle of the popular people in school. And all of a sudden, I was a new girl in this group that had been going there, and that were going there, and a couple more started from Rhode Island. And this was up in Boothbay Harbor. And for some reason, I took everybody's fancy. And I was at the top of the hill where this scholarship building was of it. And when I got through, I had to dry the supper dishes. I didn't have to do them all, the cook did them. And the kids who knew each other would walk up to the hill, and they'd all go see what Ethel was doing tonight. And out in the harbor, there was a rock that was probably about 4 foot down below the tide. And the ones that had been there before knew where it was. So we'd all go swimming out on a beautiful night like this, and we'd be together and stand on this rock, which was still in about 4 foot of water. We had a lot of fun. We were all a bunch of kids with nobody any money, and we'd meet after supper. We'd all, let's walk uptown. We'd go downtown. There was a bridge, I think it's still there, across Boothbay Harbor. And from here to there, you walked out, it was a footbridge. You walked out in the middle, and then there was kind of a little cupola there. Then you kept on going up to the other side of town. And if you lived over where we were, to get over town to get an ice cream cone, you came from here, you walked across the bridge, and you brought your ice cream cone over there. And you all made fun of talking and having your ice cream cone. And that was a big note. And matter of fact, I think only once or twice all summer we ever went to the movies. And then I had to be back up at the top of the hill. And I guess I was on strip, and the others were on their own. So you'd all walk up to the top of the hill, and I don't know whether it was 11 o'clock at the latest. I was allowed out. I had to be back. They promised my mother that they would look after me when she let me go there. So Evelyn had to be up the top of the hill. So everybody walked Evelyn up to the top of the hill.
That's great.
And then this place was closed. It was a summer place, and it was closed all winter, and it was fresh wood. Well, I mean, unpainted or anything. And when you opened it up in the spring, it would smell awfully musty. I couldn't stand the must. And I was used to sleeping out all year on a porch at that time of my life. So there was a little place that was about 10 foot by 10 foot, and I think it was called a firehouse. And I think it probably had the hoses, not the hoses, but the sprinkler nearby for in case this place caught on fire. So I bought some netting, and I put it all around, the top and the bottom, and I slept out there all by myself. And my mother had no idea of that when she found that out. She had a good thing she wasn't worrying. It was really very stupid. This girl, a 16-year-old girl alone, sleeping out where anybody could have attacked her.
Right.
And it never occurred to me all the time. And never, even with that whole group, saw where I slept. Never anybody bothered me at night. I just slept there alone, thinking nothing of it.
I think it was a different time and also it's a pretty safe place. I think people up there have a little different culture too in terms of that's probably would have been a safer place to be.
Yeah. But it was fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I was the queen of the bunch. Whatever I wanted, that's what we did.
So what's your favorite memory of Grandpa? You had 60 years of
My father. I don't think there's one favorite memory. I think of how I felt about him as a person. And living with him was like. You didn't know him, did you? No, you couldn't. I think he had PSTD from World War I.
right?
Your father.
And growing up, I remember on 4th of July, my father would practically run in the house and climb under the bed. We had these cherry bombs we had. And they sounded so much like the bombs that he lived through.
Right.
It really made him sick. But I think my mother said it's the war changed his whole personality.
Right.
She met him at a dance. He was in the National Guard, and her brother was in the National Guard. And her brother took her to the dance of the National Guardsmen. And then she attracted my father, and he liked her. And I remember him telling me, after she died, and I was visiting with him one night, and he felt in a talkative mood, he was telling me about the National Guard dance. And he said, I walked her home up the hill.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, he's cutting across. No lights, really close.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah, he missed our anchor line.
And he said, I walked her up the hill. She lived at the top of a hill in Auburndale. He said, and my fingers tingled. And he said, it never stopped.
Aww.
This was after she died, and he was feeling lonesome and talking to me one night.
That's really nice.
He was a very quiet person. He had these very cold blue eyes. If he was angry, boy, were those cold eyes. And he was not a warm person. He would touch my mother, but in those days, I think it's English is much more than Italian. We didn't hug each other. I think my father kissed my mother goodbye in the morning. He came in, he kissed her then, and you didn't see any more affection. They both, you wouldn't say there wasn't any ill feeling or anything. It was just not any feeling. You didn't touch each other. And we didn't touch each other. And my parents didn't make a habit of kissing any of us. And I don't think we're a hug. And you didn't say, oh, I love you. But you knew who loved you because of what they did.
Right.
I remember when the summer I didn't really appreciate this till later. The summer 2 summers I had to go to wasn't the sanatorium, preventorium. This is when you couldn't pass the ship test. Meant that you had the germs in you, but you were not where you could pass them on to anybody.
Oh, okay.
You were so you got sent to this preventorium, and it's all summer, and you got up at early in the morning, I can't say when. When you first got there, you didn't want to, they kept you in bed for 2 days, and you didn't want to, and this is way back when people only wore clothes in the daytime, and you were only allowed out with just a pair of shorts, no top, no nothing, and there was nobody, it was all just the same way at that age group, but it was unheard of in those days. I mean, nobody went around. Well, shorts weren't even popular. People didn't wear them. This was way before then.
Wow.
And to go out all day with males and females. Well, you didn't even think of males and females because you were pretty young at that time. And you didn't show. You were about 10 years old. I was 10 at the time. You didn't show. So you didn't think about it that way. But you felt, you got so bored being 2 days in bed when you were first there that you were happy to get out of bed even if you had to go out with just a pair of shorts. That they'll let you go out.
Maybe that's why they did it.
Yeah, I think it probably was good psychology. And it was a tough regime. You got, one morning you had oatmeal, and the next morning you had cream of wheat. And the oatmeal was a little better, but the other one always had lumps in it. They cooked them in these very big cradles like this. You can imagine trying to stir it up. And you always had healthy brown bread made by the brown, and everybody hated brown bread. White was what everybody wanted. And then you were sent out in the playground after the breakfast, and they always checked you in the bathroom. You had to produce. And I can remember being so uncomfortable in the middle of that, but I can't go. If I go now, they'll make me sit there for a half an hour in the morning, and I'm gonna wait. We gotta go now. I gotta go now. But it'll cost me a half an hour just sitting in the bathroom tomorrow morning if I go now. So that was one of the discomforts.
Take it a little more.
And then I forgot what lunch was, but sometime there was always food, and probably if there wasn't much meat, you probably had some meatloaf or something. But it was healthy, and you didn't particularly like it. And in the afternoon, we were allowed to go swimming in the lake. And then after bed, after supper, I can remember that part when I was under 16, and I was too young to get a job. I was only 15. But I went back to this camp to get, I earned my room and board, and I didn't get paid. This is still a time when money is tight, and to earn my room and board, I was in charge of the younger people, and they all thought I was 18 or 19. They had no idea. Some of them were about almost as old as I was. But they had some then that were 14 and 15. But I was in charge of the really young group. And I had, when the kids were swimming, they had a net that went around the life, went around the float anyway, and came in the other side. And all these younger kids were swimming out. And I forgot where they had some going, but there was this little boy who was kind of plump. And he would swim out to where I was. I was trying to keep the younger ones in. And there was a lifeguard out on the raft who was in charge of anything out there. But I was in charge of the younger ones. And this little boy that had a crush on me, he would jump up, take a breath of water, and go down and move forward to where I was. Jump up, take a breath, and he'd bump up like this all the way over to where I was. And I'd have to pick him up and throw him in the water. Then he was happy. And then at night, after they were put to bed, I had a bottle of Mercurochrome.
What's that?
Mercurochrome didn't
That
stink
orange stuff?
like iodine.
Is it orange?
No, reddish.
Hmm.
And all
So
these
bug
kids
bites
were
and
little in bed, and they've been put there, and they're not with their parents, and they wanted a little extra attention. So I'd go around with the bottle of Mercurochrome, and they'd all find some spot. It happened today. I was doing this. And they'd have to tell me their little story and get a little Mercurochrome with it. And that made them happy.
Oh, that was smart.
Yeah, I enjoyed that summer. I didn't eat with the kids. I ate with the adults. So, and I was treated like an adult. So it was fun. I didn't get anything more than my room and board, but it was a good summer. I liked it.
Where was that?
You know, I've had trouble in my mind. I have never found it again since I have grown up. It went from the main highway on a single straight line out to this pond. And I don't remember anything else about the pond or seeing any houses around or anything. You were way out from anything.
Right.
Because the kids used to talk about running away, but none of them knew how to get out to the highway or how to get home. They were all too young to. Yeah. This is that. The upside down is upside down, and my home was happy. And I can't think of the name of what it was that we used to sing. But I looked for it for years back after the war, and I came, and I'm sure it was all built up,
Right.
Probably gone.
and it was gone forever.
What's your favorite memory of Grandpa, of Ernie?
Yeah. Oh, of my husband.
Yes.
Funny, we have different favorite, but I remember one night when we hadn't really got engaged, and we came around. We were in the car. We'd been out down south in the summertime at the beaches or something, and we came back. We were on our way home, and we were parking before we got to home. And we started giving each other a kiss. We hadn't done a lot of kissing. And all of us, I think it was probably 20 minutes, and a policeman came around and knocked on the door.
Oh no.
And I felt real guilty. We were at some little pocket place. So then we had to get up and go home. And another one, he was taking me out on a date. And we had looked at the different movies or something. And let's see, there was a movie at that time called Tonight We Love.
Ooh.
And it was playing at the Park Theater. So my mother said, well, where are you going? And Zerdy came to pick me up. And I said, Tonight We Love at the park. And we didn't
That's
spend any
great.
time in the movie. But that kept my mother happy.
Scandalous.
That's funny. That's a good story.
Yeah, we were telling the truth. Another one he had his friend's sailboat. Ernie didn't own a sailboat, but his friend did. His friend name was Mitty Peterson, a Swedish kid, and they were best friends. So Mitty wasn't working. Ernie was working as a navigator. As a pilot on the Block Island boat that went back and forth. So he didn't have that much time to take me out, but he used to take me out in Mitty's sailboat on his time off. And we would go down the bay. My mother liked Ernie, and she would cook a little chicken. It was a whole chicken, and make up a lunch and give it to us. But we ended up, you ate the chicken, you pulled it apart with your fingers. It wasn't made up in a sandwich or anything. But she'd cook it and give it to us with some other stuff, with crackers and fruit. And we would go sailing all the way down the bay, and we jumped over the side that didn't have any head on this boat, but we jumped over the side and went swimming and took care of that. And then we'd come home sailing about supper time. And when he was working, this fella, his friend, wasn't working, and he was lazy about getting up and doing anything. And I thought, well, there's that sailboat, and I didn't have a job that summer. So I'd call him up on the telephone. Mitty, you want to go sailing today? And he would just be getting out of bed. Well, okay. What time you want to go? And my mother would give us so much. So one time he was taking me out, and we went way down, and we were coming back on a night like this, just Mitty and I. And when we got back, Ernie was pacing up and down, waiting for us to come home. The two of them called us our girl, and I wasn't the girlfriend of either one of them or the other one. They both liked me, and they both took me out together and shared Minnie's boat. But Ernie had a fit. It was really getting late at night, and a beautiful night like this, I was coming back with Mitty. So then my mother said to me, she was a wise woman, she says, Evelyn, you better decide which one you want, or the other one might give you up to the one you don't want. So then I decided I better be careful. So,
That was smart.
yeah, my mother was a smart woman.
What's your favorite memory of your mother?
Well, now that I'm older, I think of her and my father. Those summers I spent at the sanitarium. Now, I was too young to appreciate it, and I didn't want to go. And I don't think I ever thanked them. But if I see them in the next world, I'm going to thank them. And think how I spoiled this summer. Every Sunday, they would come down to this preventorium and spend 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock with me. And that's what the time they were allowed. And I never thought till years later, that really must have ruined their whole summer. To take that time of day, and you couldn't go anywhere, and you don't get back in time to do that.
Right?
But I hated going. I used to tell, I said, if you make me go there, I'm going to come home in a coffin.
Nice.
A little drama.
And at that time, my father's boss had one daughter, and she didn't pass her shit test, but they wouldn't send her to this camp. It was all underprivileged children, and they didn't want to mix with them. I didn't hear a lot of swearing, but they didn't speak English very well. I will say that.
At the camp?
Yeah.
Right.
And then for the lavatories, they had the men in one room and the women in the other. We had this long sink that must have been like a trough to feed the cattle. And a pipe went above it like this, and holes came out this side, holes came out that side. And some of us stood on this side, some on that side. You brushed your teeth, you washed up, and you brushed your teeth.
Hmm.
And very few of them had toothpaste. They were from the lower income group, and they brushed their teeth with soap.
Wow.
So by the end of the summer, I brushed my teeth with soap, just to be like everybody else. So after that, if your mother said, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap,
You weren't that scared. So how about your mother by herself, though? What, do you have any really good memories of her?
well, I remember that she had this photograph album with pictures of taken of herself with these cups that she had won, and she was a winning canoeist on the Charles River.
Oh, really? I
And
didn't
the
know
Charles
that.
River came right through Orbitdale, which was in walking distance of her house.
Wow.
So she couldn't afford to pay the rents for the canoes. So a lot of young fellows, you would take her canoeing. And she got so good at it, she and whoever she was with would win the races. So she got invited on a lot. And she had all these dented up cups when I was young. They were in suitcases because she traveled with my father when he was in service. They had these big suitcases that put everything in. Would have drawers and everything, and the government would move them for you.
Hmm.
So that was before my sister was born. I think she was a nice combination between being disciplinary, do what you, but she was always fun. And if it was a good day outside, let's go do this. See, she didn't have a job, but she didn't have a car. And if, well, you go to the beach, or she was, I can't remember how she used to get around like she did. But we were always doing something.
Right?
And housework didn't come first at all. And I think food was always the only thing she bought was bread. Everything else she made. And then in the kitchen there was a big thing that pulled out, there's a bin with flour and a bin with sugar. And they got fed quite often. They got emptied.
So she cooked a lot.
Yeah, she cooked a lot. And she became quite a good cook. She used to make cream puffs. And later on, when she was older, she took up cake decorating. And she'd bake a cake about 4 or 5 inches high with a hole in the center, you know, where the cone came through.
Right?
And then she'd decorate that, and she'd take a little plastic doll about this high that you could buy. And for somebody was having a shower in the neighborhood for a baby or something, or usually a wedding shower, she'd make this cake and then she'd decorate it. She went to night school. She used to go to night school when we were pretty young. The first thing she took was family health. And my father would stay home with us and put us to bed. And she would go right after supper. She went out to supper. She'd go to these classes that were put on by the Red Cross. How to keep your children from getting sick. And how to do this and how to do that, healthy things. Which was unusual in that day to take such an interest in it. And my father was perfectly home, happy to stay home alone. He'd get up early to go to work at the south, where he taught, no, where he owned. He didn't own it then, but anyway, where he worked. He had to get up there very early to go out and work on the roads in the summer.
Right?
And by time after supper, he was tired and perfectly happy to stay home and watch us kids brush our teeth. The three of us would be standing in a row, and my mother would have be out doing the dishes in the kitchen. She'd tell my father, well, you watch over them. And my father would be reading the paper, standing the three of us kids in a row, and we'd start, spitting toothpaste at each other.
With you.
Because my father was looking at the paper. He put down his paper. Now stop that. I don't remember any of us getting whacked over it, but
Better memory.
then I think my mother took us up to bed to hear our prayers.